Welcome to Northwest, a Unitarian Universalist congregation. I am Kathy Henry. My pronouns are she, her. I'm your worship associate for this morning's service. Karen Hager, my wife, is actually doing a sermon, but she got sick and lost her voice. And so she's not here. I will stay here far away from everyone. We have no COVID in the house, but so she'll be on Zoom doing a raspy sermon for you later. Our choir director, Ken Hermanot, is away this weekend attending a UU musicians conference in Ann Arbor. Alex Myers is also enjoying the weekend off, and music has been pre-recorded. Please greet your neighbors with a wave from wherever you are before we start. We'll start with those on Zoom, so we'll switch the Zoom view to gallery so you can see others waving at you and wave at us and each other. And those in the sanctuary can turn to that camera right there and wave to those attending virtually. And finally, greet each other in the sanctuary by waving. Good morning to everyone. Our prelude this morning is Vivaldi Cembalo, Opus 51, number 4, with the Detroit Symphony Youth Ensemble. The Temple in the House by Anthony Lawler. The sacred cannot be precisely defined. Each of us perceives it through the lens of a unique personal history. For me, sacredness is an experience of the inner radiance of life, the unseen force that transforms and nourishes the physical world, but is never limited by it. There is something more to it, a mystery that is never totally grasped. Elections with the Southfield Emergency Fund. Southfield Emergency Needs Fund every other month throughout the year. Their goal is to help residents overcome personal hurdles to achieve a satisfying and productive quality of life. Human Services is a division of Southfield Community Relations. You can text your amount with a $20 plate. It's 248-574-8034, or donate online and select Give to Plate Collection 50% split. If you're here in person, checks and cash can be placed in the collection basket in the front of the sanctuary. And if you're online, the information will be in the chat box.
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth, keepers of faith, makers of peace, and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are one.
This reading is excerpts from the article Notre Dame and the Questions It Raises About Sacred Space, written by Michael J. Crosby after the destructive fire at Notre Dame in Paris in April of 2019. It was like watching someone die. The most poignant images were the crowds of people in Paris kneeling in the streets, facing Notre Dame with their heads down, praying for the cathedral as it smoldered. This was not just a demonstration of distress over a critical piece of France's history going up in flames. Christians around the world observe the span of time between Palm Sunday and Easter Sunday as Holy Week, a period for believers more hallowed than Christmas. And a symbol of that faith was aflame in the holiest 7 days of the Christian calendar. For believers in architecture with a capital A, it was as if the whole world was suddenly focused on your religion. You could turn on CNN and see an architectural historian talking about the finer points of Gothic architecture. People who didn't know a finial from a flying buttress were tweeting about this tragedy, how it in some way brought them closer to other human beings. The destruction of a vital work of architecture more than 850 years old was actually doing this. Suddenly, it seemed as though architecture's power over people was magnified, exalted. At least that's the way it might have appeared to those who worship at architecture's altar. For someone who reads and writes a lot about religious architecture, about the capacity of architecture to speak to spirituality, it seemed to me a double dose of heartache. Religious architecture is in a precarious state right now. Across all faiths, fewer people are visiting religious buildings. You might have heard of the nuns, folks who check the nun box on a survey form when asked what organized religion they identify with. 23% across all age groups identify themselves as nuns in the US today, more than the percentage of Roman Catholics. But oddly enough, a majority of nuns don't describe themselves as atheists or agnostics. 72% of nuns say that they believe in God, a higher power, or a spiritual force. Another way to describe this majority among nuns is spiritual but not religious. A cathedral speaks to them about sacred space in different ways than it does to committed believers. But a burning cathedral can still move them at a deeply human level. A few years ago, I worked with a studio of graduate architecture students to understand how they viewed spirituality in architecture. I asked them to define it for me. The majority didn't talk about smells and bells, stained glass, or altars. Their focus was on what people did together in a space and whether it was spiritual or not. They didn't believe architecture was sacred because someone had blessed it, or if it looked one way or another, or that it was made of a certain material. What seemed primary for these students was how the space allowed or encouraged people to relate to each other, how they shared with each other, how they cared for each other. So when these students were asked to design a sacred space, they focused on environments that would accommodate feeding the hungry, making art together, caring for children or the elderly, or communicating with others around the globe. For these students, the sacredness of a place resided in the possibilities of human interaction and meaningfulness, not in the fabric of the architecture itself. I learned a lot about the power of architecture from these students. Notre Dame will be rebuilt. It will, years from now, stand as it once did, but will it fulfill the idea of a sacred space for the people who reconstruct it? They will be of a different place and time, and a reconstructed Notre Dame will not speak to them as a sacred space as it did to those who raised it nearly a millennium ago. The Trappist monk and mystic Thomas Merton warned against recreations of religious buildings. He saw them as denying the possibility that the sacred could be encountered in anything but a structure that looked like it had been built ages ago, as if God did not belong to all ages, and if religion were really only a pleasant, necessary social formality preserved from past times in order to give our society an air of respectability. Merton believed that it's up to every new generation to create architecture that speaks to the spirituality of its time, whatever that is. Of course, Notre Dame means different things to different people. As this cathedral's reconstruction occupies our attention over the next decade or more, it's worth asking questions about what sacred space means to us, if it means anything at all. Our hymn is number 1054, Let This Be a House of Peace.
Let this be a house of peace, of nature and humanity, of sorrow and elation. Let this be our house, a haven for the healing, an open room for question and our inspiration. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be a house of freedom, guardian of dignity and worth held deep inside us. Let this be our house, a platform for free voice, where our sacred differences here shall not divide us. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be a house of peace. Let all in this house see truth, where scientists and mystics abide in reverence here. Let this be our house, a house of all creation, where works of art and melodies consecrate the atmosphere. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be our house. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be a house of prophecy. May vision for our children be our common theme. Let this be our house of myth and lore and legend, our trove of ancient story and cradle of the tender. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be our house. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be our house. Oh, let this be a house of peace. Let this be our house. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be our house.
Good morning. I wish I was there with you in person, but I'm glad to be here with you on Zoom. James, my youngest son, is taking care of Maisie, the puppy, who is not yet able to be left unsupervised. And I asked him a moment ago how she was doing, and he said, Maisie's in the breezeway thinking about what she's done. I don't know what that means, and I don't want to find out. But I'm glad to be with you today. Many years ago now, I found myself sitting on a stage in Los Angeles with lots of curious people looking back at me. And I was there to co-teach a workshop on spiritual practice with this wonderful, funny, dynamic teacher. I was dazzled by him and I was intimidated at the same time. As we got settled into our seats, an orchestra began to play. We didn't know what to do. Okay. As we got settled into our seats, I was nervous about how I'd do. Because what if I messed it up? What if this cool, experienced master teacher thought that I was no good? Or what if all those bright-eyed people looking back at me ended up bored or confused? And then Michael, the other teacher, asked everyone to get quiet and take a breath with him. And then another, and then another. And he started a prayer. And maybe he planned it ahead of time, or maybe he was making it up as he went along. But it swept me up and it carried me with it. He talked about opening our hearts to the work we do together in class that day. He talked about making this space safe, about shifting our focus to what we were there to learn. And then he said, and I can't say this exactly, I'm paraphrasing it because it blew my mind, and so I don't remember it exactly, but he said, we who are sitting in ordinary time, as ordinary people, now declare this time, this space, these bodies, these thoughts, these dreams, these hopes, these fears, we declare them sacred. And when we declare it to be so, it is so. And so it is. Amen. And I could feel the shift in the room. And I could feel a shift in me. I was still nervous, but I'd been reminded that there was more going on than just my worries or just the logistics of the class. We'd shifted into sacred space and sacred time. I remembered the spiritual support that I had with me, and I was reminded of the spiritual nature of every being in that room. In those moments, we focused together and the space opened up. It was palpable. You could feel the difference. How do we create sacred space? By shifting our perception, by consciously putting our attention and our intention on whatever it is we want to shift out of the ordinary. We create sacred space by declaring it sacred and then by respecting it as sacred space. It's not enough to just label something sacred. The way we treat it, respect it, love it, live in it, embody it, that's what makes it sacred. So what's the difference between ordinary and sacred? Something that's sacred to me, a trinket or a memory, a place, might be perfectly ordinary to you. You might not even notice it. But to me, it will have a special light around it. It means something. You could think of the word sacred as reserved for something untouchable, something set apart, something that is not of the world. And that's part of the traditional definition of the world, I guess. I think of the word sacred as also meaning containing or reflecting what is holy. Holy meaning more than the ordinary, beyond the ordinary. And of course, we are holy, even as we are ordinary. I believe that we can create sacred space in our bodies, in our hearts, our minds, just as we can in our living rooms or churches. Sacred space reflects back to us more than what we can see with our eyes. It opens up to an experience of more. Sacred space can inspire, comfort, protect, it can challenge, and it can also hold us in a state of quiet. Sacred space is not just about the outward form, whether that's of the body or the building, but it's about the spark that's in that form. Opening a door to allow ourselves to be touched by the holy, to be touched by the more than. No matter how we're feeling or what's going on, that's one of the things that sacred space allows. In that reading Kathy shared from Crosby's essay on Notre Dame and sacred space, he says his students taught him that the sacredness of a place resided in the possibilities of human interaction and meaningfulness, not in the fabric of the architecture itself. The possibilities of human interaction and meaningfulness. So how do we create sacred space? With attention and intention, with consistency and care, with curiosity and a willingness to show up for more than you can imagine. Can something as ordinary as the chair you're sitting in right now be a sacred space? Are you up for a quick experiment? Do you want to try it? Just get quiet and take a moment to breathe. This will only take a second. So just take a moment to breathe. If it feels safe to close your eyes, go ahead and close your eyes. And as you breathe, feel the breath moving in your body. Feel how your body is connected with the chair, the places where it touches the chair, and the places where it doesn't. Feel your presence in the chair, more than just your physical body, your presence in the chair. As you breathe, feel the life moving in you, through you, that inner radiance that is always transforming you and is unique to you. When you're quiet, you can feel all the little things going on in your body you may not otherwise pay attention to. And if it feels right, you can thank the chair for holding you this way, your body and your presence in the chair, for being a vehicle for your awareness, and for keeping you balanced. When you sit here like this, breathe like this, you might notice that some of the things that were bothering you feel a little bit less bothersome because of this new way in which you're focusing. Just keep breathing and think or feel or imagine that this chair supports you as you open to receive even more. This chair is a sacred tool for your learning and exploration. As the chair supports your body, so are you supported by the many miracles and puzzles and more than-ness around you. This chair is sacred. Declare it so. And so it is. Easy, right? Can it be that easy, really? Yes and no. If you declare the chair sacred and then you forget all about it and throw it across the room later in an argument with your neighbor, you've probably returned it and you to ordinary time. But if you shift into love for the chair, if you shift into love for yourself, your body, and your presence as you sit on the chair, if you treat the chair with special kindness because you have declared it sacred, then it is sacred. What if we treated our chairs like that? Our bodies like that? What if we started to treat each other like that? Here's one of my favorite quotes from Thomas Merton. Life is this simple. We are living in a world that is absolutely transparent, and the divine is shining through it all the time. This is not just a nice story or a fable. It is true. Thomas Merton didn't mess around, and he saw the sacred everywhere in everything. If we entertain that notion just for a moment, the idea that our world is transparent, what we see on the surface is transparent, and the sacred shines through, the holy, the more than shines through. That suggests that everything can hold a reflection of the holy. If I shift into that sacred space, every doorway I pass through can be sacred. The way the light comes in the window as I do the dishes can remind me of the more than in my life. Even my body, no matter how it feels at the moment or how I feel about it, is a miracle, a reflection of the holy. In this space that we share now, whether virtually or physically, we can make an agreement to shift that into sacred space and time. And that holds even when ordinary things are happening in the space, like fixing the plumbing, doing the payroll, setting up the chairs. It can take place in a context of possibility of encounter with the more than, no matter what we're doing. Anytime there's human interaction, there's the possibility for us to assign meaning that makes it more than. That can transform our arguments and our resentments, our squirminess, into something that, if we allow it, can open us up to deeper connection with the sacred. So, we who are sitting in ordinary time as ordinary people can now declare this space, this time, these bodies, these thoughts, these desires, these hopes, these fears, we declare them sacred. And when we declare it to be so, it is so. And so it is. Amen.
Please rise as you are able.
Find a stillness, hold a stillness, let the stillness carry me. Find the silence, hold the silence, let the silence carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true Seek the essence, hold the essence, let the essence carry me. Let me flower, help me flower, watch me flower, carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit
We extinguish this flame, but we keep its light in our hearts with its message of love and justice, taking it outside these walls to the world we live in until we are together again.
You are where I go to hide when the wind starts to blow, when the lightning starts to strike, when the thunder starts to roll, when this life becomes a fight. You are where I put my love down when I'm running out of time. You are where I go to slow down. You are my favorite place. You are my sacred space. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Where I go to be moved, where I go to be still. Your love makes me new. In your presence I heal. You are my favorite place. You are my sacred space. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. No walls, no war, no calls, no weapons formed, no law, what for? You are where I go to hide. You are where I go to hear. You are where I go to feel, to remember what is real. Ooh, you are my favorite place. You are my sacred space. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Yes, you are.